right now. I'm going to draw a line here on the board, and when you've written your answer, come up and put it here on the board on the line that I've. So take a couple minutes and by the way, it's possible for more than yes or no. There could be shades of gray too. There could be shades of gray. So you can put it anywhere on the line where you think it belongs. So, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, yes or no, and why you think it was or wasn't fair. So. This one works especially well with kids because fairness is always a principal concern. You don't need to be overly wordy about it, just if there's a reason why you think yes or no is. Is there anyone still writing, or is there anyone who's going to put one up, toss one up? All right. And so this is where part of that visible thinking piece comes in too, is now the people who've participated in this, and again, not everyone always will, but the ones who have now have this sort of visible marker of their own thoughts on the thing. And it's become part of the class conversation, because the next process of this would be to read them out. And sometimes the easiest way to do this is just to go through really quickly and read them. So we have, yes, he had to choose somebody, and why not the youngest? Yes, who can do the job best matters more than fairness. Yes, God is always perfect in all of his ways. Yes, God has ultimate authority over the decision. Already read that one. Yes, because is God's. Yes, that's right, yes, it's God's, I think it says seniority. Yes, God knew David's thought and faith and knew he was the best person for the job. Yes, because he is God, he knows who can be a better king, the best king, more than we do. Yes, God had a specific, Yes, God had a specific reason for choosing. Yes. Yes, not just because God is always right, but also because David possesses the requirements of a good king, which is more than physical strength or age. Yes, only God knows what is really fair. Also, Saul did not love God as much as David did. Yes, God sees the person's inside. Yes, because it is God who chooses. Yes, God's fairness is not always understood by us until we look at God's much bigger picture. God could see into hearts in order to choose a king who would serve him and God's people best now and in generations to come. And this is about where the line is drawn, just judging by the looks of things. Was it fair? No, but God is God. Right down in the middle in the gray area, it doesn't have to be fair. If life was fair, we'd all be in hell. Yes, because God is fair and knows what's best. No, his brothers had more experience in life. No, older brothers should have had the chance. I think that says hierarchy implied in brackets, or hierarchy important maybe. No, he wasn't qualified based on standards of the current time for kings, i.e. he wasn't the biggest or wasn't the strongest. No, because normally the older ones are supposed to have more opportunities or chances. And yes, God looks in the heart of people, not appearance. God knows David because of his strong relationship with him. So a wide variety of opinion there. Seems like this exercise is called tug of war, so it is leading, the yes tug is winning a little bit more than the no tug. So having done this, having had the opportunity to put their own thoughts about the story, their own thoughts of the story, and based on their own experience too, because these answers don't live in a vacuum. They come from our own experience of being the youngest or being the oldest, being middle, being only children, being part of a big family, big extended family, small extended. There's always, and this is where pastoral care sometimes is a part of what's going on. When you know your kids really well, sometimes you can tell which answer came from which kid. But then this, having done all this, having given them the opportunity, that's when you can, I need a much bigger music stand to keep all my notes together, I tell you. This is where you can really start to get to the last part of it, which is, how does, in this, you can see on that sheet, I've given you a terrible selection. How does God, Jesus, our faith, help us when you can tailor this question to the context of the story? So, how does our faith help us when things seem unfair? Would be an appropriate question for this. How do we solve the tugs? How does our faith help us when things seem unfair? And in the interest of time, we won't have time for the conversation about that, but you can actually think about how the stories of the Bible, how this story helps us think about fairness. And then you can start to talk about how, as the story points out, God's way of looking at the world is not always our way of looking at the world. Sometimes things might seem really bad, but there's something good on the horizon. Sometimes when you have, and this works for stories where it's about how God favors the poor and Jesus has dinner with the tax collector. Any stories that are about how God's world is so much, God's vision for the world is so much different from our own, that the youngest got picked even though hierarchy was important. That's where we can really start to say, well, why does God work the way God does when sometimes it's not what we would always want it to be? How do we deal with things that seem unfair to us, but maybe there's a better reason? And you can really start to show them how God's world works. And the tug of war really kind of brings to the floor, because there are going to be people who put the no answers, there are going to be people who put the middle answers, and there are going to be people who put the yes answer. And of course, a number of us in this room know that ultimately for David it turned out to be a good thing, but when it's a story that's entirely new to them, they may not know the next part of the story. So, those are two of them, and I'm sorry I kind of had to rush through them. Once they become part of the routine, they work really, really well. So it's about establishing that routine, and if the first time you try it falls on a bit of, then it's just about trying it again and making it part of the routine. But for spiritual growth, for really helping them and facilitating and fostering that biblical literacy, but also that spiritual growth and that understanding of who God is in their lives, how God is working in their lives, and not just by reading these stories, which can sometimes seem locked in time. but really making them alive. I found these routines, which I inherited. Like I say, when I got to the school, they said, this is the way we do things, and you're a teacher, so you know what that's like. For me, I was like, I'm not a teacher, I don't know what I'm doing. Inheriting these routines have made my ministry at the school so much better, and having used them in Sunday schools too, when I've been invited downstairs to work with the kids, it really opens up great conversation. And like you said, it's much less preaching. You stand there, you do much less talking and preaching, and more engaging with the kids. And it also opens up pastoral opportunities too. You might actually hear something from a kid that they may not feel comfortable telling other people. Maybe not even their parents, maybe not the parish priest, whoever it is. So there's a great deal of utility to these beyond just, okay, this is the story of David and Goliath, go. Okay, so I want to share with you 3 others and talk about them really quickly, and then I'm going to hopefully leave a couple minutes for questions. So that was tug of war. This one's really easy, and it's a great way to start off some time with the kids, and it's just called See, Think, Wonder. And so if there's something for them to, if there's some sort of almost like an object for them to look at. Let's say you're talking about Jesus' baptism in January, and you ask the parish priest, if you're in a church context, if you could borrow an oil stock or something that's used in baptism and just show it to them. And let them just write down what they say. What do you notice about it? If you're looking at the shell that holds the water, what do you see? What do you notice about it? Does it have a silver handle? You know, it depends on what each one looks like. And then to actually think and ask questions about it. And then to record all this, just to record it all down and make it part of the visible learning that's happening in the classroom, in the Sunday school room, at the VBS, whatever your particular context is. So that's one that you could actually show them. But it could also be a piece of art. It could be, you could actually show that video, if you worked with video, and say, what did you see? What did you notice? Another one, and to me this is the best one, because in the educational sort of materials that come out of this, it's called word, question, answer. But what it actually is a Lectio Divina. You read it 3 times, and you say the first time, and it works really well with the Psalms. They're perfect for Psalms. They work really well with some of Paul's writings too. If you want to read the love poem that's so often read at weddings, if you want to read Paul's letter, the portion of 1 Corinthians about spiritual gifts and about how the body of Christ, or things like that. These are great things that are really about the words. So you say, I'm going to read it once, and if a word jumps out at you, what did you hear? I'm going to read it a second time. Do you have a question? If you could ask this story something, what would you ask? And then the third part, and again, it's all about making this stuff visible, so it's about writing it down and recording it. And then the third time, did we hear any answers to our questions? Did you hear an answer to someone else's question? How can we learn and support each other in our life of faith? Even though we're 7-year-olds in a Sunday school classroom, we can still, they can still be a part of each other's life of faith. It's basically a Lectio Divina. You read it 3 times and they do something different each time, but it also allows them to focus on it quite a bit more. This is another one, really good for character-driven stories. It is a little bit better for older kids because the specificity of detail about characters that it kind of asks for is a little bit better for older kids, like grade 5, 6, 10, 11, early high school. But it's called Step Inside, and you think about who are the characters in this story. Let's take the parable of the prodigal son, where you've got the older son, the younger son, and the father. And then you start thinking, okay, well, what's going on with the older brother? What's going on with the younger brother? What do you think he can see? What do you think he can notice? How do you think the older brother feels when the younger brother comes home? Or you could do it with the gospel from a couple weeks ago. It was the story of the Pharisee and the tax collector praying in the temple, where the Pharisee prays and says, thank you, I thank you, God, that I'm not like other people. And then the tax collector cries his prayer to God for feeling so woeful about himself. It's a great thing when it's a character-driven story. And also the Old Testament stories about like Joseph and his brothers, Moses, anything from the David sequence, like Hannah and Samuel, David, Jonathan. That's a good one too, actually. And then thinking about what's behind the characters. And then, because in all these stories, God is part of the conversation. So when you get to thinking, well, what do you think King Saul cares about? Then it's, what do you think God cares about? So it's all about using these routines to actually help spiritual growth. At first, when I got there, I was terrified, thinking, okay, now I need to be a teacher, and I just know how to sing. So, but then what I've seen over my years at Haverford working with, this has been really successful, and I hope that if you're able to implement these in whatever context you're working in, I hope you have good success with them too. Thank you very much. I know they need to, because we're having our final session in here, so we need to get ready for that. But were there any really quick questions? Go for it.
Good. Actually, what you're doing here is you're actually just 3, 2, 1. And that's actually, you're giving them thoughts and questions, and then you're actually asking them to do that.
Yeah.
Also, too, this is really following the format of higher fast, so you're actually progressing through those levels and you can delve into stories. So this is kind of saying it's an idea for a month, which we kind of follow the levels.
Yeah.
And the last thing, that was this last one is what we call teachers connect text.
Exactly.
So it's very popular.
Yeah. And it's about finding ourselves in the story. So if it's a parable of the prodigal, again, we're someone in that story. Again, that's another older and younger one too. So. Yeah. It is, yeah. And in the context of what we're doing here, it's about that spiritual growth. The higher level thinking becomes the basis for spiritual growth, for understanding who are they in God's life. Who am I in this story? What does God do in that story for that person? How is God doing that in my life? So it's been really useful. I say again, as someone who is not formally trained as a teacher, it's actually been a lifesaver for me. So, thank you very much. That is a capital T teacher, not a small T.
No.